I was sitting quietly at the table next to my 7-year-old grandson at my son's second wedding. Suddenly, the boy grabbed my hand tightly and whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." I asked him, "What's wrong?" He trembled and replied, "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" I slowly lowered my gaze and froze. I took my grandson's hand and we got up in silence. "I'm so glad you're here." If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. I was sitting in the middle of the wedding hall, a ballroom aglow with candlelight, right next to my little grandson, the boy I love more than life itself. Today was the wedding of my son, Alex, to his second wife, Ava. My little boy, Leo, was busy pushing his red toy car back and forth across the immaculate white tablecloth. His clear eyes seemed immersed in a world of his own, where the noise of the adults around him didn't exist. I looked at him, and my heart softened. I carefully straightened the tiny bow tie at his neck, a gesture as gentle as if I were caressing the memory of his mother, Maria, whose every tender smile I still remember as if it were yesterday. The soft melody of the jazz band filled the room, blending with the murmur of conversations and the clinking of wine glasses. The ballroom was decorated with impressive luxury, with arrangements of pristine white roses on every table, and the candlelight reflected on the gleaming silver plates. I looked up, searching for Alex. He was busy going from table to table, toasting to thank the guests with a radiant smile that seemed to want to hide the emptiness I knew he still carried in his heart since Maria left. In the distance, Ava, my son's new wife, stunning in her beaded wedding dress, posed for photos with her friends. Her smile was perfect, without a single cloud, as if the whole world belonged to her. I looked at her and felt something strange in my chest. A weird sensation, but I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just being overly sensitive. Waiters moved gracefully between the tables, serving more wine, clearing empty plates, and arranging the napkins. An elderly couple sitting at our table turned to me with a kind smile. "How fast Leo is growing up. How old is he now?" "Betty." I smiled and replied in a soft voice, "He just turned 7. Time flies." Then I turned to cut a small piece of cake to give to Leo. The boy looked up, his eyes shining with gratitude. But he immediately lowered his head again and continued pushing his toy car as if only that toy was the place where he felt safe. Suddenly, Leo stopped. His little hand stopped pushing the car, and his round eyes looked at me with a seriousness that was not normal for him. I was a little startled. A bad feeling ran through my body. He grabbed my hand tightly. His little fingers were ice cold. In an urgent voice, he whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." His voice trembled as if he were holding back a fear he couldn't explain. My heart raced. I leaned over him and put a hand on his shoulder. "What's wrong? My boy, tell me what it is." Leo shuddered, pressing his lips together. And then he whispered so softly that I had to lean my ear closer to hear him. "Grandma, You didn't look under the table, did you?" His words were like a cold knife that went through my chest. A terrible anguish began to grow inside me, making it hard to breathe. I tried to stay calm and stroked his hair, but his gaze, the panicked look of a boy of just 7, prevented me from ignoring it. "It's okay, my love. Let your grandma look," I said, trying to make my voice sound calm to soothe him, although I felt my own heart was pounding. Carefully, I lifted the edge of the white tablecloth and looked into the dark space under the table, where the wooden legs of the chairs and Leo's little shoes were swinging, and then I saw it. A small piece of paper folded in 4, lying there, right next to Leo's chair. It was so small that it was almost lost in the darkness, but its presence chilled my blood. Leo huddled against me, his little hand gripping my arm as if seeking refuge. I felt his agitated breathing. Every tremor seemed to tell me that something was very wrong. I crouched down completely, and with a trembling hand, I picked up the paper. The people around us were still laughing and toasting, but at that instant my entire world shrank until it was just me, Leo, and that damned paper in my hand. I unfolded it. The dim candlelight on the table was enough to read the scribbled words. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child serving. A few words, but they were like a direct punch to my heart. I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins and the air get stuck in my chest. Leo is severely allergic to shrimp, something my whole family knows perfectly well. A single piece of shrimp would be enough to put his life in danger. Who could have written this? Who could be so cruel? Right on my son's wedding day. I squeezed Leo's hand, feeling his little fingers tremble in mine. I stood up abruptly, not caring about the surprised looks from the people around me. The elderly couple nearby stopped talking and looked at me with concern. I hugged Leo with all my strength, as if I feared he would vanish if I let him go. The laughter and music continued, but for me, everything had become a heavy, suffocating silence. Memories of other times flooded my mind, taking me out of that gleaming wedding hall and back to the years when our family was whole. I once thought my son's home would always be filled with laughter, but life, like a sudden gust of wind, extinguished that flame of happiness, leaving me with scars that would never heal. I remember Maria, my first daughter-in-law, like I remember the morning sunlight streaming through the window at dawn. Her smile was tender and warm. She always made me feel like I was in the arms of a true daughter. Maria never raised her voice, never did anything that worried me. She was one of those people who just by looking at them made you feel at peace. I still remember those very windy afternoons in the suburbs of Phoenix when I would arrive at Alex and Maria's little house. The laughter of Leo, who had just started to walk, echoed in the backyard as he chased a colorful rubber ball. Maria would be on the porch with a basket of freshly picked vegetables, smiling as she watched her son. "Mom, Betty, try the chili I made. See what you think," she would often say to me, her voice full of pride as she placed the warm bowl in front of me. I would sit there eating and talking with her about simple things, while Leo crawled on the floor, clinging to an old toy car. But the most beautiful, and also the most painful memory, is the night Leo became very sick. He had a very high fever, His little body burned and his eyes could barely open with no strength left even to cry. Maria held him while tears rolled silently down her cheeks. "Mom, Betty, I'm so scared," she whispered. Her voice trembling, I sat next to her, taking turns to place damp cloths on his forehead, trying to calm her. "Don't worry, honey, the boy is strong. He's going to be okay." But inside, the worry weighed on me like a stone. I stayed up with Maria until dawn, when the first rays of sun appeared, and Leo's fever finally broke, and he fell asleep in his mother's arms. Maria turned to me, her eyes red, but with a faint smile. "Thank you, Mom. Without you, I don't know what I would have done at that moment." I just took her hand and squeezed it tightly, as if I wanted to tell her that I would always be there for her and for Leo. I thought that this little family would be happy forever, like a song that never ends. But then, one fateful afternoon, everything fell apart. The phone rang while I was washing dishes in the kitchen. The cold voice of a police officer came through the line. "Mrs. Williams, we regret to inform you that there has been an accident." I don't remember how I finished hearing the sentence. I just know that my hands were shaking so much that I dropped a plate on the floor and it shattered. Maria was gone in an instant when a truck that lost control hit her car on the highway outside the city. I stood there paralyzed, feeling the world crumble in front of me. Maria's funeral was on a day of torrential rain. The drops fell non-stop as if the sky was also crying for her. Oh, Leo, who was only 4 years old then, was in my arms, confused, looking at everyone with his innocent eyes, not understanding what was happening. "Grandma, where is my mommy?" he asked in his little voice. I hugged him tightly, swallowing my tears, and whispered, "Your mommy is in a very beautiful place, my love." But inside, I felt shattered. Alex, my son, collapsed in front of the coffin, his shoulders shaking, and he couldn't say a word. I knew he was trying to be strong, but his gaze was empty, as if a part of his soul had gone with Maria. After that tragedy, Alex changed completely. He buried himself in work. He would leave home very early and wouldn't return until Leo was already asleep. I understood that he was running away, trying to fill that immense void in his heart with endless days of work. But Leo, my poor boy, suffered the most. He started talking less. His gaze was often sad, as if he was waiting for a miracle that would bring his mother back. I became his only support. I took him to school every morning and sat by his bed every night to rock him. "Grandma, tell me a story about my mommy," he would often ask me, and I would tell them to him in a choked voice, talking about the times Maria sang to him to sleep, how she cut his fruit into little pieces to make him his favorite dessert. Each story was an attempt to keep Maria's image alive in Leo's mind and in my heart. Lucy, my adopted daughter, also became an essential part of those days. With her warm heart and skilled hands, she would come to the house often, bringing coloring books or cookies she had baked herself. Lucy loved Leo as if he were her own little brother. She would carry him, teach him to read, or sit for hours with him at the table to help him with his clumsy drawings. "Look, Leo, your house turned out prettier than mine," she would say, laughing in her voice as clear as a bell. But sometimes I would catch Lucy looking at Alex when he entered the house in silence after a long day of work. It was a deep look that contained something more than a simple sibling affection. I saw it, but I decided not to say anything. Maybe I was afraid that if I brought up the subject, I would break the fragile stability of what was left of our family. Alex's house slowly became devoid of laughter. But thanks to Lucy and Leo, the family flame remained lit, even if it was weakly. I did everything possible to keep that flame from going out. But in the depths of my heart, I knew that both Alex and I lived with wounds that had never healed. Every time I saw Leo sleeping, I saw Maria's features on his little face, and my heart would ache again. The memory of that afternoon is still as clear in my mind as if time had not passed. I was sitting in my small living room listening to the sparrows singing in the yard with a heart full of mixed feelings. It was the first time my son Alex was bringing Ava home to introduce her. I tried to open my heart. I tried to see this young woman through the eyes of a mother who wants her son to find happiness again after so much pain. But deep down, I couldn't shake a feeling of unease, like a cold wind that made me shiver. That afternoon, Alex arrived later than usual. I was in the kitchen preparing the tacos that Leo loves so much when I heard the door open. Alex came in with a strange glow on his face. His eyes lit up as they were in his youth when he used to talk about Maria with a passion he couldn't hide. "Mom," he said in a choked voice, leaning against the doorframe. "I want you to meet someone." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, feeling a bit of nervousness. "Someone special?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Alex smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. "Yes, you're going to like her very much," he said, full of confidence. I nodded. I wiped my hands on my apron, trying to hide the worry that was starting to grow in me. After Maria, I wasn't sure anyone could fill the void she left, not only for Alex, but also for Leo and for me. That night, Ava appeared. She entered my house in an elegant light blue dress. Her hair perfectly styled in waves that framed her face, and her lips painted a soft red that curved into a smile. That smile, I must admit, was charming, as if she had rehearsed it to please anyone. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Williams," she said in a sweet voice, bowing her head slightly. I returned her smile, invited her in, and served her a cup of hot, aromatic coffee. "Your house is so cozy," Ava said, as her eyes scanned the family photos hanging on the wall where there was one of Maria hugging a very tiny Leo. I nodded and thanked her, but her eyes lingered on that photo longer than I would have liked, and I wasn't sure if I liked that. Dinner went on in an atmosphere that I tried to make as friendly as possible. I placed the dishes I had prepared all afternoon on the table. Tacos wrapped in corn tortillas, a plate of enchiladas with red sauce, and a fresh salad with mango, Leo's favorite dish. Alex sat next to Ava, his eyes never leaving her. His happiness was visible in every gesture. "Mom, Ava works in marketing at my company. She's very good at what she does," he said, his voice full of pride. Ava smiled. She served me an enchilada with a delicate but calculated movement. "Mrs. Williams, this is delicious. You have to teach me how to make it," she said, giving me a friendly look. I smiled and responded politely, but a small part of me remained uneasy. There was something about the way she spoke, the way she laughed, that made me feel like I was watching a very well-staged play. Leo, my grandson, was sitting at the head of the table, strangely quiet. He, who normally wouldn't stop talking about school that night, just picked at his food without lifting his head once. I noticed that he was avoiding Ava's gaze as if he was trying to hide in a safe corner. Ava leaned over, took a chocolate bar from her purse, and placed it in front of Leo with a radiant smile. "This is for you. It's very good, Leo," she said in a voice as sweet as if she were trying to win him over. But Leo remained still, his little hands gripping his silverware, and then he simply turned his face away without touching the chocolate. I saw a flash of fear in his eyes and felt as if my heart would shrink. Alex frowned, about to scold his son. "Leo, what's wrong with you? Ava is giving you some candy." I quickly intervened. "It's nothing. He's probably a little tired. Leave him be, son." Alex sighed, but didn't say anything else and turned to serve Ava more wine as if he wanted to lighten the mood. Lucy, my adopted daughter, was also at dinner. She sat across from me, eating in silence, but I noticed how her gaze darkened when Ava took Alex's hand under the table. Lucy has always been a very sensitive girl, and I know she loves Alex like a brother. But sometimes I wonder if that feeling isn't deeper. When Ava took Alex's hand, Lucy's hand stopped over her glass, and I saw her fingers tighten a little. She didn't say anything. She just lowered her head and continued eating. But that silence was heavier than any words. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to understand what was making her sad. But I knew it wasn't the right time. After dinner, Ava insisted on washing the dishes, even though I refused several times. "Mrs. Williams, let me rest," she said with overflowing enthusiasm. I reluctantly agreed and watched her go into the kitchen, roll up her sleeves, and hum a cheerful tune while she cleaned. I must admit that she did everything impeccably. The dishes were neatly stacked and the sink was sparkling. For a moment, I thought, this girl seems very caring. But then, when I went out into the living room, I saw Leo sitting, coloring with his little hands clutching a crayon. Ava approached and sat down next to him, praising him. "You draw so well. Leo, what is it? Let me see." But Leo immediately let go of the pencil and leaned back with an expression of distrust, as if she were a threat. Ava glanced at me and quickly forced a smile, as if to cover up the awkward moment. "What a shy boy," she said in the same sweet voice. But I saw something strange flash in her eyes. Alex, meanwhile, didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary. He was busy serving more wine, telling funny anecdotes from work, and laughing loudly every time Ava told a joke. The introduction ended with my son completely satisfied. Seeing Ava off at the door with his eyes fixed on her as if there was no one else in the world, I stood there watching them walk away with a strange feeling in my heart, as if something wasn't quite right. Time passed, and Ava gradually became a part of our lives. One weekend morning, with the bright California sun flooding the living room through the windows. I was knitting a scarf when Ava appeared, smiling from ear to ear. "Mrs. Williams, I want to take Leo to the park today. Is that okay?" she asked, her voice full of enthusiasm. I looked at Leo, who was on the floor playing with his wooden blocks, his face expressionless. "Of course, I'm sure he'd love it," I replied, forcing a smile. Even though I felt a little doubt inside, Alex had gone to work, and I thought maybe a little fresh air would do Leo good. Ava took Leo's hand and led him toward the door while I watched them go with a strange heaviness in my heart. When they returned, Ava came in with a triumphant smile. He had so much fun. He wouldn't stop going down the slide. And he even asked for another ice cream, she recounted, her voice full of excitement. But when I looked at Leo, I saw that his shirt was dirty with some dried dirt stains on the blue fabric that I had ironed myself that morning. He was silent with his toy car in his hand without saying a word about his outing. "Did you have fun, my boy?" I asked, crouching down to stroke his hair. He just nodded slightly, looking away. I wanted to ask him more to know why he was so quiet. But Ava intervened with her always sweet voice. "I already told you, Mrs. Williams." He loved it, I nodded. But inside me, a small piece of the puzzle of doubt began to form. On another occasion, while Alex was at work, Ava showed up unannounced. I was in the kitchen preparing chili for lunch when I heard her talking to Leo in the living room. At first, her voice was soft, but suddenly I heard a harsh phrase. "Stay still, Leo. Don't make a mess. You're a big boy now, but you still act like a baby." I stopped dead in my tracks, my hand still over the onion I was chopping, and a chill ran through my body. I came out of the kitchen, and instantly Ava changed her tone, becoming as sweet as if nothing had happened. "Our Leo is so clever. Look at the tall tower he built," she said, pointing to the wooden blocks the boy was playing with a radiant smile. But Leo just pressed his lips together and looked at me as if asking for help. I tried to smile and said, "Yes, he's very skilled, but inside the unease was starting to grow, like a small thorn digging into my heart." I tried to calm myself. Surely she's not used to children. Anyone is a bit clumsy at first. Leo's 7th birthday is a memory I will never forget. Lucy, my adopted daughter, spent all morning baking a chocolate cake, Leo's favorite. When she arrived with the cake and placed it on the table with its candles lit, Leo shouted with joy. His eyes lit up for the first time in months. "Aunt Lucy, this is my favorite cake," he exclaimed. Running to hug her, she smiled, stroked his hair, and told him tenderly, "I made it for you, my love. Eat a lot." I watched them with a warm heart, feeling that the family flame was rekindled. Ava was also there, but she only clapped in a forced way. Standing in a corner with a weary smile, her only gift for Leo was an indifferent pat on the shoulder and a happy birthday champ. I saw how Leo shrank a little, avoiding her gaze, and my heart ached again. I wanted to say something, but I stayed quiet, telling myself not to get too involved. Another time, Alex took Ava and Leo to the grocery store. I stayed home. But when they returned, I heard Ava complaining in an irritated tone. Leo dropped a whole bag of candy at the checkout, and I had to pay for it. What a clumsy boy. Alex frowned and turned to scold his son. Leo, you're a big boy now. You have to be more careful. I saw Leo lower his head with his hands intertwined, and his eyes sought mine as if asking for help. I quickly approached and put a hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, my boy. It was just some candy. But inside, I couldn't stop wondering why Ava got so angry so easily with a child. Why couldn't she be as gentle as Maria had been? One afternoon, when I went to pick up Leo from school, his teacher took me aside and said in a low but concerned voice, "Mrs. Williams, lately Leo has been talking less and seems very withdrawn. Is something happening at home?" I froze, but I tried to downplay it. "I'm sure it's just the changes, Mrs. Davis. Don't worry." But on the way home, Leo tugged on my blouse and said in a trembling voice, "Grandma, I don't want to go home with Miss Ava." I stopped and knelt down to look into his clear eyes, my heart feeling squeezed. "Why do you say that? My love, Miss Ava loves you," I said. But as soon as I said it, I knew I was wrong. Leo shook his head with firm determination in his gaze. "No, Grandma, she doesn't love me." I stroked his hair, trying to calm him, but inside I couldn't deny that the boy was telling the truth. Lucy, who was nearby, had heard everything. She turned away in silence, but I saw how her shoulders moved slightly, as if she were holding back a sigh. All those loose pieces, all those little signs. I had seen them, but I had chosen to ignore them. And so the day of my son's wedding arrived. That afternoon, the golden sun of Florida streamed through the large windows, bathing the ballroom in a radiant light, as if wanting to celebrate my son's happy day. I was sitting at table number 8 next to my grandson, Leo and Lucy, my adopted daughter. Leo was playing with his red toy car, whispering a soft vroom vroom. I looked at him and my heart filled with tenderness. Lucy, in a simple beige dress, was sitting on the other side, leaning over from time to time to say something in Leo's ear with a smile as sweet as the morning sun. "Eat another little piece of bread, my boy," she said, breaking off a small piece for him. I smiled at the sight, feeling a little comfort in my heart. Although our family had gone through so much pain, the presence of Lucy and Leo was always the fire that warmed my soul. Alex, my son, dressed in an elegant navy blue suit, was walking between the tables, toasting with relatives. His face was overflowing with happiness. His radiant smile seemed to want to erase the dark years that followed Maria's death. I looked at him, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. I wanted to believe that he had found a new happiness, that Ava, the dazzling bride in her beaded wedding dress, would give him a new home. But every time my gaze met Ava's, who was laughing loudly in front of the cameras, never letting go of her wine glass, I felt a small thorn digging into my heart. Her smile was too perfect, like a carefully placed mask. The soft melody of the jazz band played, blending with the lively conversations of the guests. The waiters moved discreetly, serving appetizers, crispy crackers, an aromatic cheese dip, and plates of fresh shrimp elegantly decorated. I noticed that Leo only took a cracker and then carefully pushed the shrimp plate away. I frowned and asked him in a low voice, "Don't you like this, my love?" The boy shook his head, looking away as if he were hiding something. I wanted to ask him more, but a close relative interrupted, saying cheerfully, "And Leo's behaving well. Betty, look how big he's gotten." I smiled and replied, "He's a smart little man now," but inside, I couldn't help but worry. Leo had never refused food in such a strange way. In the distance, I saw Ava's gaze turn to our table. The smile on her lips seemed to tighten for a second, just enough for no one to notice before she turned to continue toasting with another guest. I tried to dismiss my uneasiness, telling myself I was overthinking. But then everything changed in an instant. Leo, who was still playing with his toy car, pushed it too hard, and the toy rolled onto the floor. The boy quickly crouched down to pick it up, but I saw him freeze, his eyes wide, fixed on something under the table. I leaned over to ask him what was wrong when Leo pulled out a small piece of paper folded in four with trembling hands and a pale face. He immediately clung to my hand and whispered urgently, "Grandma, let's go. Please, let's go now." My heart started pounding as if it wanted to jump out of my chest. "What's wrong? My boy?" I asked, trying to stay calm. But Leo's panicked look prevented me from doing so. Trembling. He repeated that question that chilled my blood. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" His words were like a cold knife that paralyzed me. I crouched down, lifted the white tablecloth, and my eyes scanned the dark space under the table. The little paper was lying next to his chair, a harmless object but full of menace. I picked it up with trembling hands, feeling the world shrink around me, leaving only Leo, me, and that damned paper. I unfolded it. The candlelight was enough to read the scribbled words. Table, add shrimp to the child serving a few words. But they were like an electric shock that ran through my entire body. I subconsciously crumpled the paper in my hand. The music, the laughter, everything around me seemed to sink into an abyss from which I couldn't escape. Ava, in her dazzling wedding dress, continued to laugh in a corner of the ballroom, raising her glass to toast with a guest, as if nothing in the world could worry her. Alex was busy taking photos with his coworkers, with a radiant smile that seemed to confirm that this was the happiest day of his life. But for me, everything in that ballroom was a farce, a curtain that hid the terrible truth I had just discovered. I squeezed the paper tightly, feeling it burn my skin. Leo, the grandson I loved more than my own life, had almost become the victim of an evil plot, right on his father's wedding day. I turned to Lucy, my adopted daughter, who was sitting next to Leo. Her eyes were filled with concern when she saw my expression. "Take care of Leo, please," I said, trying to stay calm. Although I knew I couldn't hide the tremor in my voice, Lucy nodded, pulling Leo closer to her and hugging him tightly like a protective shield. "Where are you going?" she asked me in a low voice, but full of anguish. I just shook my head without answering because I didn't even know what I was going to do next. I quickly went out into the hallway, my legs heavy, as if they were carrying lead, but with my heart pounding, urging me to act. Near the bar, I saw a group of waiters chatting. Their laughter sounded like a painful contrast to the storm that was raging inside me. I recognized David, the young man who had brought the food to our table several times. He had a kind face and a friendly smile. But at that moment, I couldn't think about that. I walked straight up to him, put the paper in his face, and asked in a firm voice, "Do you know who sent this paper?" David looked at the paper and his face changed instantly. His carefree smile turned into an expression of panic. "My God, this is my paper," he stammered, his hands trembling as if he wanted to snatch it from me. "A woman gave it to me, and I accidentally dropped it when I was carrying the tray." His words were like a ray of light in the midst of confusion, but they also agitated me even more. "Who gave it to you?" I insisted, almost shouting, completely losing my composure. David took a step back, confused. "I don't know her name, ma'am. She just told me to give it to the chef." The paper didn't say who sent it. Rage exploded inside me like a burning fire. "All the more reason," I said, getting closer, my voice trembling with anger and fear. "You know, my grandson is severely allergic to shrimp. A single piece could kill him." David turned pale, his eyes wide with horror, and shook his head frantically. "Ma'am, I really didn't know. I just followed the note. I had no idea about anything." His voice broke as if he too was trapped in this nightmare. The other waiters began to whisper among themselves, looking at each other with curiosity and concern. I squeezed the paper in my hand, feeling it burn my skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break everything, but I knew I couldn't let my emotions get the better of me. Leo was waiting for me, and I had to protect him. From inside the ballroom, the embassy's voice cheerfully announced that they should get ready for the main course. His voice was like a cruel reminder that time was running out. And if I hesitated, a deadly trap could be waiting for Leo. I took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling in my body. I knew I couldn't stay silent. If I didn't act right now, I would never forgive myself. I returned to the ballroom with the paper still in my hand as irrefutable proof of a sinister plan. The ballroom was still flooded with candlelight, and the music of the jazz band mixed with the laughter of the guests. The waiters silently served the main courses, and the aroma of roasted meat and gravy filled the air. But for me, everything was a farce. I looked at Leo, huddled next to Lucy, his clear eyes full of fear fixed on me as if I were his only refuge in the middle of the storm. I took Leo's little hand, feeling his trembling fingers in my palm. And then, as if driven by an invisible force, I stood up abruptly. My voice resonated clearly and firmly above the music and conversations. "One moment, please, before we begin to eat. I have something to clarify." The whole ballroom fell silent as if time had stopped. All eyes were on table 8 where I was standing with Leo by my side. and Lucy sitting with a spark of determination in her eyes. The clinking of glasses ceased, the murmurs died down, and I could only hear the pounding of my heart in my chest. I held up the paper. The words scribbled on it were an undeniable accusation. Who wrote this paper asking for shrimp to be added to the food of the child at table 8? I asked, my voice trembling with indignation, but forcing it to be clear and sharp. Whispers began to be heard like small waves in a calm lake. Some guests looked at each other, shaking their heads with looks of curiosity and confusion. I felt Leo's gaze fixed on me as if he were begging me to do something to protect him. Alex ran from another table with a smile on his face that quickly turned to concern when he saw my expression. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, completely bewildered. I didn't answer him immediately. I just put the paper on the table and pushed it towards him. "Read it yourself," I said in a harsh voice, although inside I was a mess. Alex took the paper. His eyes scanned the words, and I saw his face turn pale and his hands tremble slightly. "What does this mean?" he asked, stunned, looking at me and then at Leo, as if searching for a logical explanation. Alva, in her dazzling wedding dress, approached, frowning with a perfectly feigned surprise. "What is all this? Like some kind of bad joke?" she said in a soft voice. But I noticed a flash of panic in her eyes. I looked at her directly in the eyes, my heart gripped by anger and fear. "My grandson is allergic to shrimp," I said, my voice trembling with indignation. "This is not a joke. This is an attempt at murder." My words fell like thunder, plunging the ballroom into a deathly silence. Some guests' mouths dropped open in astonishment, while others began to whisper, their eyes moving from me to Ava. Ava let out a forced laugh, a mask to maintain her composure. "Excuse me, Mrs. Williams, but there is no name on the paper. Are you going to believe a story that a child who found it made up?" she said, with a mocking tone, trying to make me look like a paranoid old woman. Some guests began to comment doubtfully, "Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Who would do something like that at a wedding?" The blood boiled in my veins. Ava's audacity left me almost speechless. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear off that wedding dress to reveal the truth, but I knew I had to remain calm for Leo, for my family. Suddenly, Lucy stood up, hugging Leo tightly, her eyes ringed and fixed on Ava. "That's enough, Ava." Her voice sounded cold but full of pain, as if she couldn't contain herself any longer. Lucy stepped forward and slapped her. A smack that echoed throughout the ballroom. The dry, resounding sound broke the silence and the falsehood. Everyone froze, including me. Ava put a hand to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock, and then turned to Alex, sobbing. "You see, she's crazy with jealousy, and that's why she's attacking me. What have I done to deserve this?" Lucy didn't back down, her fists clenched and her voice broken with rage. "The only wicked person here is you. You wanted to harm an innocent child at your own wedding." Her words were like a knife that cut through the heavy air of the ballroom. The looks of doubt began to center on Ava, and I saw her freeze, her false smile fading. Alex was motionless. His gaze went from me to Lucy and Ava, as if he were trapped between two worlds. "Lucy, calm down," he said in a trembling voice, but I knew he was no longer sure who to believe. The murmurs of the guests grew like a tide that carried all eyes toward me, toward Ava, and toward Leo, my little grandson, who was trembling in Lucy's arms. Ava tried to maintain her false calm, but I saw her hands shake when she spoke. This is a slander. I'm sure someone put that paper there to ruin our wedding. Her voice was sharp, but I noticed the panic in her eyes, as if her perfect mask was starting to crack. I couldn't stand her audacity anymore. The anger inside me exploded like a fire that consumed all my patience. I hit the table hard, making the glasses shake. "That's enough!" I shouted in a voice so cold that it silenced even the music of the jazz band. "David, come here." The young waiter, David, approached from a corner, his face pale with fear. His eyes darted from side to side as if he were trapped between the truth and the storm that was coming. I showed him the paper, my voice trembling but firm. "Confirm it. Is this the paper you received?" David nodded repeatedly, stammering. "Yes, ma'am, it is." A woman from the other table gave it to me, and I accidentally dropped it when I was carrying the tray. He lowered his head as if he wanted to avoid my gaze. I felt my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm because I knew everyone in the ballroom was watching. Ava hurried to interrupt in a sharp, almost desperate voice. "You're mistaken. I don't know anything about that." But before she could respond, a weak voice full of pain was heard from behind. Gloria, Ava's younger sister, burst into tears and stood up from her chair. "It wasn't my sister Ava who gave me that paper," the young woman said, trembling as tears ran down her cheeks. "She asked me to give it to the waiter. I swear I didn't know what was inside." A murmur of astonishment ran through the ballroom. My God, I can't believe it. How is that possible? I looked at Gloria and my heart softened. She was barely 18 years old. Her eyes were red and full of confusion, as if she too was trapped in this nightmare. Ava turned abruptly and yelled at her sister, her face disfigured with anger. "Shut up, Gloria. How dare you make up lies to harm your own sister?" Her voice was sharp, but I saw her lips tremble as if she were struggling to hide the truth. Gloria backed away, trembling from head to foot, and said between sobs, "I'm not lying, sister. I just did what you asked." Her words were like a dagger that went through Ava's falsehood, leaving the entire ballroom in a state of shock. A close older relative shook his head. His voice choked. How is it possible to not even spare an innocent child in the midst of the chaos? Lucy stepped forward, hugging Leo tightly, and said in an icy voice, "If you keep denying it, we can ask to check the security cameras in the ballroom. Everything will be cleared up in a moment." Her words were like a stone thrown into a lake, causing waves of panic. Ava's face turned ashen. Her lips tightened, and her gaze desperately sought an escape. But there was no escape now. She didn't say another word, and that silence for me was the clearest confession of all. Alex froze, his hand trembling on Leo's shoulder, looking in horror at the woman he had just called his wife. "Ava," his voice broke as if he were trying to cling to the hope that it was all a misunderstanding. But his gaze, moving from the paper to Leo, said it all. I saw how his heart broke, just like mine had when he discovered the plot. And Uncle stood up and shook his head, disgusted. It's unbelievable. Such wickedness on a day of celebration. His voice trembled as if he were holding back his indignation. After Lucy's challenge about the security cameras, a deadly silence took over the ballroom. Eva, the woman I once tried to accept as part of my family, Walter, stood there, her face pale and her lips pressed together, looking for one last excuse. But the truth was exposed, and she had nowhere left to run. Alex, my son, walked slowly toward her, his face tense and his eyes red, and asked her, Eva, tell me the truth. Is it true? His voice trembled as if he were begging for a glimmer of hope that it was all a mistake. But I knew that deep down, he also felt the painful truth. Eva took a step back, trying to force a twisted smile. But her eyes betrayed her panic. You don't believe me, she said in a broken voice, as if trying to cling to the last drop of Alex's trust. It's all their plan. I didn't do anything. But her words sounded weak, like a wind about to die out before a storm. I looked at her, my heart heavy with indignation and pain. This woman I thought would bring my son happiness was now standing in front of me like a stranger, a danger I hadn't seen before. Lucy, my adopted daughter, put a hand on Alex's shoulder and said in a voice she was holding back with all her might, Leo almost died because of this woman. Her words were as sharp as a knife. Eva yelled desperately, Shut up! You're just a jealous intruder! But Lucy didn't move. She was trembling with rage, but stood firm like a shield for Leo. How dare you call me jealous? Lucy responded in an icy voice. Look this child in the eyes and tell me you didn't try to hurt him. Leo clung to me, his little hand squeezing mine as if he feared being dragged into that nightmare. The guests began to stand up. The festive atmosphere had completely broken. A relative of our family, Mr. Johnson, hit the table with anger. This is a disgrace. We can't let this go. Murmurs of support were heard like waves that grew and drowned Eva in everyone's looks of contempt. Alex, trapped between truth and love, cried out, his voice broken with pain and indignation. Leo is my son. Leo is my... You tried to kill my son at our own wedding. His words were like a direct stab to Eva's heart, and I saw her burst into tears. But those tears, I knew were not of repentance, but of being discovered. I placed the paper on the table and declared in a firm voice, anyone who tries to harm my grandson will never have the right to set foot in this family. My words resonated clear and unyielding, like a sentence. Eva looked up, her eyes full of fire, but I saw defeat in her gaze. She had lost not only to me, but to the truth. The hotel security personnel approached and in a polite but firm manner asked Eva to leave the ballroom. Ma'am, please come with us, one of them said in a cold voice. Eva backed away, looking for help, but no one sided with her. Many guests shook their heads, leaving their half-empty glasses and sighing with resignation. "Unbelievable," one whispered. "How can someone be so cruel?" another said. Horrified, Alex stood motionless, his hands on his head as if trying to keep his world from collapsing. Then, as if he no longer had the strength to stand, he slowly knelt in front of Leo, his voice choked. "Son, forgive me. Forgive me, my boy, for not protecting you." I saw tears run down his cheeks, and I felt my heart break in two. I helped Alex get up, squeezing his shoulders, and said in a grave but confident voice, "Luckily, we stopped it in time. This false happiness has to end here and now." I looked at Ava, who was being escorted out amidst looks of contempt, and in my heart, I knew that she never was and never would be a part of this family. In the days that followed that nightmare wedding, my family was caught in a silent whirlwind where wounds still bled and unanswered questions floated in the air. I felt as if I had just woken up from a nightmare in which I almost lost Leo, my grandson, whom I love more than life itself.
The story of the failed wedding spread everywhere, from the small suburban streets to the conversations of distant relatives. The house phone wouldn't stop ringing. Some blamed Alex for blindly trusting Ava. Others sympathized with Leo, the innocent child who was almost the victim of an evil plot. But for me, every call was just a painful reminder of what we had gone through. Alex became withdrawn after what happened. He was no longer the radiant man in the navy blue suit from the wedding day. Instead, he would take Leo to and from school in silence every day, his gaze filled with pain and guilt. The name Ava, like a curse, was never mentioned in the house again. I looked at Alex with a pained heart, but I knew he needed time to heal, to find himself after being betrayed by the person he loved. I didn't blame him because I understand that love can get to people. But I also knew that our family had to rise from the ashes. I continued to care for Leo as I had since Maria left. I cooked his favorite dishes like cheesy pasta or a soft pudding, trying to give him back a sense of security. But who really healed Leo's soul? It wasn't me, but Lucy, my adopted daughter. Every morning, she would carefully prepare his lunch for school, carefully choosing foods without shrimp or anything that could put him in danger. She would even write a little note for the teacher explaining Leo's allergy along with a smiling face drawn with a crayon which he loved. "Aunt Lucy, you draw so well," Leo would exclaim when he opened his lunchbox, and I would see his eyes light up as if a part of his innocence had returned. Every afternoon, Lucy would take Leo to the nearby park. I used to watch them from a distance, seeing how she taught him to fly a kite, showing him how to hold the string so it would fly high. Once Leo fell off the slide, and Lucy ran to him, picked him up, brushed the dust off his clothes, and whispered, "It's okay, my love, I'm here." Leo's clear laughter echoed, a sound I thought I had lost forever, and which was now like a balm for my heart. I looked at Lucy with infinite gratitude because she was not only a sister to him, but also like a second mother filling the void that Maria had left. One night, when Leo had a high fever, I saw Lucy spend the night by his side. She sat on a chair next to the bed, placing damp cloths on his forehead, while she quietly told him the story of a brave sparrow that flew through a storm. I stood at the door watching in silence,
and I realized that Alex's gaze followed Lucy for a long time. It was a complex look, full of gratitude and remorse, as if he was realizing something he had ignored for a long time. I didn't say anything. I just retreated in silence, giving them their space. But in my heart, I began to hope that maybe there was a light at the end of our family's dark tunnel. One night, during one of the rare dinners where we were all sitting together around the table with the warm pasta I had prepared, Leo suddenly looked up, his clear eyes fixed on Lucy. "I want Aunt Lucy to be my mommy," he said in a soft but clear voice, as if it were something he had been thinking about for a long time. Everyone at the table fell silent. Lucy blushed and lowered her head, gripping the spoon as if to hide her embarrassment. Alex froze with teary eyes, as if Leo's words had touched a very deep chord in his heart. I smiled. I put my hand on Alex's shoulder and said in a warm voice, "True happiness, son, doesn't come from a dazzling wedding dress, but from a sincere heart that knows how to love." Alex looked at me, then at Lucy, and I saw a small spark of hope shine in his eyes. Time passed and Ava disappeared completely from our lives like a toxic wind that had gone. Leo became a happy boy again, always stuck to Lucy with his red toy car and the drawing she made for him. I saw him running and playing in the yard, feeling a great relief, but also a pang of pain, thinking about everything he had to go through. One day, Alex took Lucy's hand. He suddenly stood in front of me in the living room and said in a trembling but firm voice, "Mom, I know I made a mistake. I was blind. I put Leo in danger. But this time, I don't want to let go of the person who has truly been by our family's side." Lucy lowered her head with flushed cheeks, but I saw a radiant smile on her lips. I nodded as tears silently rolled down my cheeks. "Son, the only thing I want is for you and Leo to be happy," I said in a choked voice. That night, after Leo fell asleep, I sat by the window, watching the silver moon that stretched over the quiet street. Its soft light was like a reminder that although our family had gone through dark days, light always finds a way to break through. I whispered to myself, family isn't always made of blood ties. Sometimes it's chosen with love and courage. After that grim wedding, a new chapter full of light had truly begun for my family. I looked toward the yard where the kite that Lucy and Leo had flown the day before was still there, and I knew that although the old wounds might never fully heal, we would continue on together with love and strength as our support. After going through all this, I understood something very important, that in life there are losses that cannot be replaced, betrayals that break the heart. But sincere love will always be the light that illuminates the way. Family is not only built with blood ties, but also with choices, with the courage to protect each other from darkness and danger. It is sacrifice and true affection that brings lasting happiness, not false appearances. I want everyone to remember to listen. You have to let your heart guide you, because sometimes a small gesture of attention can save a life. And it is kindness that gets us out of nights that seem to have no end. The story you have just heard has been modified in names and places to protect the identity of the people involved. We do not tell this to judge, but with the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I truly wonder if you were in my place. What would you have done? Would you have chosen silence to maintain peace? Or would you have dared to face everything to reclaim your own voice? I would like to know your opinion, because every story can become a candle that lights the way for others. God always blesses us, and I am sure that courage will lead us to better days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I will leave you 2 of the channel's favorite stories. I am sure you will be surprised.